But we have hate speech laws in this country. We also have laws against parading the symbols of terrorist organisations and openly supporting them. Yet we've had people chanting death to Jews or where's the Jews. We've had people celebrating the slaughter on October the 7th last year. We've had people chanting that Zionists are terrorists. We've had people chanting from the river to the sea. Why haven't the laws at least been enforced more stridently by police forces?
Well, that's a question that the Prime Minister needs to answer. That's the question that our law authorities need to answer. That's why I've said there needs to be a national police task force urgently set up that brings into the tent state police authorities, federal police authorities, intelligence and other security agencies, not to deal with Islamophobia, not to deal with the other isms and the other forms of hate, but to deal with the principal source of hate that we are seeing right now in our country, which is anti-Semitism. I mean, just in the last day or two, we've seen people, as you say, chant, globalise the Intifada. The Intifada was a series of bus bombings, suicide bombings in pizza restaurants, and people are calling for that. Are they here in Australia? We've seen people hold up signs saying Zionists are terrorists. Well, we know John Howard and Peter Dutton and Nova Peris and Julia Gillard and Peter Cosgrove and Dennis Richardson and Lindsay Fox and so many other non-Jewish leaders in our country call themselves Zionists, and here people are effectively calling them terrorists. So why isn't the law being upheld in this regard? And these people who are demonstrating outside places of worship, outside people's homes, in the suburbs, are covering up their faces, concealing their identity, deliberately designed to intimidate and to create fear. Why aren't the police clamping down on that? I think there's a lot more with respect to the law enforcement agencies that can be done to ensure that we're all much safer in this country we love, called Australia.
Well, it's so worrying, it's so disturbing, it's so frustrating because this has been clear for 14 months now. You're out of politics now, you're living a private life, you have a wife and young children. Tell me about this rising tide of anti-Semitism and how it's affected you living your life with your family in Melbourne.
Well, as you know, Chris, I have not taken up the offer that has come many a time since the 2022 election to enter into the public debate on issues economic, on issues political. But I have entered the public debate to defend and support the Jewish community, but most importantly of all, to uphold Australian values. Because the attack on the Adass synagogue was not an attack just on the Jewish community, it was an attack on the Australian community. We've seen social cohesion undermined. We've seen anti-Semitism normalised. And it's only a question of time before another minority group is next. And, people need to stand up, speak out, because we know bad things happen when good people stay silent. So that's why I'm using my voice, Chris. That's why I'm using, my profile in Australia to actually shine a spotlight on the failure of leadership that has affected us all.
This is very personal, though, when it comes to the Jewish community, and I agree with you. One of the reasons we have to stand up against this is because we're worried about all Australians. This is an attack on the way of life in this country, not just an attack on the Jewish community. But parents are sending their kids to Jewish schools knowing they're being targeted in this way by public incidents, by graffiti. Describe to us that the way that Jewish people in this country have had to actually change the way they go about their daily lives.
Well, school principals at Jewish schools are saying to their students, don't wear your school uniform outside the school grounds. I mean, how is that occurring here in Australia? People are fearful of going to their places of worship because there are protesters outside. You've had graffiti, daub, Jew die, outside one of the most prominent and largest Jewish schools here in Melbourne. The list goes on and on and on. Deborah Conway, one of our great singers-songwriters, has faced death threats. She has been cancelled. she has been doxxed simply because she is Jewish. Some of the largest businesses in our country, which are owned by Jewish Australians, have faced boycotts and attacks simply because the owners are Jewish. This is not acceptable. And I don't know why the Prime Minister has refrained from getting on the front foot in this debate. It affects us all, Jewish and non-Jewish. And when you see someone like Nova Peris, you know, an Olympian, an Indigenous champion, stand up and say she apologises to the Jewish community for what they have gone through, and she uses her voice to call for change, you know how widespread the sense of disenchantment with this government's leadership is.
Yeah, the Federal Employment Minister, Murray Watt, has said that you're involved in this. What you're saying in this is politically motivated.
Well, that's just a very low blow, and it was good to see Mike Kelly call him out and call on him to apologise to me. I'll accept the apology today if he makes it, but if he fails to make it, he'll be continually condemned for those inappropriate and false comments. My family has perished in the Holocaust, and other members, including my mother, have survived it. I care deeply, Chris, about what is happening in Australia right now. And I ask myself, if not me, who will speak out? And if not now, when do we speak out? So this is the time that we all need to use our voice, because it's no option to be a bystander when such bad things are happening. That's the message from Holocaust survivors when I did the Sky documentary. They say to the Prime Minister, lead. A leader is somebody who takes risks. We saw that with John Howard when he successfully tried and implemented gun control. He took on some of the critics. He took on people who didn't want to see it happen. But that was leadership, and it affected real change. Anthony Albanese has to take on some of the extremists in his party, some of the extremists in society, and he has to use his position as the first among equals in the parliament to effect real and lasting change. I'm not holding my breath because his record to date has been so poor.
No, pressure has been on him for 14 months and he's done essentially nothing. Tragic stuff for this country. Thanks so much for joining us, Josh Frydenberg.
My pleasure.